In 2016, reality outpaced fiction. Donald Trump was no longer a punchline. He was the President of the United States. For a show like South Park, which had spent decades mocking politics, media, and American culture, the Trump era wasn't just material, it was a stress test. How do you satirize someone who's already a walking parody? How do you parody a world where absurdity is now policy? As Trump's rise turned headlines into memes and rallies into chaos, South Park responded not with a Trump impersonation, but with a character it had been building for years, Mr. Garrison. Through him, the show launched a surreal yet painfully accurate reflection of a country spinning out of control. But as the real world got darker, the comedy got harder, and South Park found itself facing a question it had never needed to answer before. What if the joke isn't funny anymore? South Park began in 1997 as a crude, outrageous cartoon that shocked censors and parents alike. But beneath the fart jokes and foul language was a sharp sense of cultural awareness. The show always targeted hypocrisy and groupthink, no matter where it came from: liberals, conservatives, celebrities, religious groups, tech companies. Its creators, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, insisted on offending everyone equally. They didn't want to preach, they wanted to poke holes in ideologies and expose the absurdities of modern life. For nearly 2 decades, this approach worked. South Park could turn anything, from climate change debates to the iPad launch, into a hilarious, often brutal commentary. But then came 2016. The election of Donald Trump didn't just disrupt politics, it disrupted satire. Trump was the first real-world figure whose own persona eclipsed parody. His tweets, speeches, and scandals were so exaggerated that they defied exaggeration. For South Park, this was a creative crisis. Parker and Stone made a deliberate choice. Instead of directly animating Trump, they would let Mr. Garrison, the deeply flawed and perennially offensive teacher-turned-politician, embody Trump's rise. Over several seasons, Garrison transformed from a bitter, out-of-touch educator into a nationalist demagogue, spouting offensive slogans and capitalizing on fear. He didn't wear a Trump wig or mimic his voice, but the message was clear. This was Trump, unfiltered and unrestrained. The decision to use Garrison was both brilliant and unsettling. It allowed South Park to explore Trumpism without resorting to impersonation. But it also forced viewers to confront the ugliness within the show's own characters. Garrison's campaign was fueled by hate, ignorance, and denial, and it worked, just like in real life. The line between fiction and reality blurred, and the deeper Garrison went into Trump territory, the less funny it all became. Season 20, which aired during the election, was originally written with the assumption that Hillary Clinton would win. When Trump pulled off a surprise victory, the writers had to scramble to rewrite the season's arc in real time. What resulted was a disjointed, uncomfortable narrative, because the reality they were trying to mock kept shifting under their feet. By season 21, South Park began pulling back. Garrison as Trump was shown less frequently. The creators admitted they were exhausted. In interviews, they said they were bored with Trump, that real life was funnier than anything they could write. The satire machine had broken. Instead of focusing on the White House, they shifted to the cultural fallout: online outrage mobs, political correctness, the rise of social justice activism, and the commercialization of morality. Characters like PC Principal and Strong Woman became vehicles for exploring how institutions adapted or failed to adapt to a divided nation. But South Park wasn't immune to criticism. Some longtime fans accused the show of losing its edge. Others argued that its refusal to pick a side in a time of moral crisis felt cowardly. In an era when political lines were stark and emotions ran high, satire that laughed at everyone started to look like satire that stood for nothing. Parker and Stone pushed back, insisting that taking sides had never been their job. They weren't activists or pundits. They were cartoonists. Their goal wasn't to guide the culture, it was to reflect it. Still, the tension remained. In the 2020 pandemic specials, Garrison returned. Now fully the stand-in for Trump, he was detached, dismissive, and gleefully destructive. He mocked science, downplayed the virus, and left chaos in his wake. But even here, South Park avoided turning him into a central villain. He wasn't some genius manipulator. He was just another selfish character, doing selfish things in a world full of them. And maybe that was the point. Trump wasn't an exception, he was a symptom. Through the Garrison storyline, South Park painted a bleak portrait of America's susceptibility to fear and outrage. The people who followed Garrison weren't evil. They were confused, angry, and desperate. The institutions that enabled him weren't malicious. They were broken, understaffed, and spineless. And the culture that gave rise to him, a culture of constant distraction, outrage, and tribalism, was the same one South Park had been skewering for years. As Trump left office and Garrison returned to teaching, South Park moved on. But the damage remained. The show had exposed the dark undercurrents of American life, but in doing so, it had also revealed its own limitations. Satire is meant to hold a mirror up to society, but what happens when the mirror is cracked? When the reflection is too close to home? Parker and Stone seemed to ask these questions through the show itself. The laughter became more bitter, the punchlines more loaded. Even in later seasons and Paramount Plus specials, South Park continued to wrestle with its place in a post-Trump world. The post-COVID specials imagined a dystopian future where old friends were divided by politics and conspiracies. The message was clear. The real danger wasn't one man in power. It was what we let ourselves become while he was there. South Park didn't defeat Trump. It didn't glorify him either. It tried to make sense of him and of the country that made him possible. Through Mr. Garrison, the show explored not just political absurdity, but the deeper dysfunction of American life. It showed how easy it is for fear to triumph over reason, how quickly the ridiculous becomes reality, and how satire can lose its edge when the truth is already absurd. But it also reminded us that comedy, even in dark times, still matters. It provokes, it questions, it reflects. And sometimes it reveals things no news broadcast or op-ed ever could. As the show continues into new seasons, the Trump years linger like a bad hangover. The world is different now, and so is South Park. It no longer has the luxury of being just a comedy. It's become part of the cultural record, a chronicle of the bizarre, terrifying, and occasionally hilarious years when America felt like a reality show gone wrong. The laughs may be fewer, the tone may be darker, but the mission remains the same. Tell the truth through jokes and hope someone's still listening. If you're tired of noise and want truth that cuts deep, this is the channel. No spin, no hype, just the hard questions we all need to ask. Subscribe now, before the next line gets crossed.